There's a number tattooed into almost every part of your life, and you've probably never once questioned where it came from. Your age, it's on your ID, your medical charts, your dating profile, your obituary someday. And here's the strange part. For most of the people who have ever lived on this planet, that number simply did not exist. Not was unknown, did not exist. Nobody was keeping the count. So let's actually sit with that. If you were born into a hunter-gatherer band, or a herding community moving with the seasons, or almost any oral culture before the spread of written records, there was no ledger with your name and a date, no clerk stamping a form the day you arrived. So how did anyone know how old you were? And more specifically, did they even celebrate the day you were born the way we do? The honest answer is fascinating, because it turns out humans didn't need a calendar to know who they were. They built something else instead. Something arguably more durable than a date ever could be. Start with the sky, because that's genuinely where most of this begins. Long before writing existed anywhere, people were watching the moon do the same thing, over and over, on a loop simple enough to track without numbers. Full, dark, full again. That cycle is roughly a month, and you don't need to count past 10 to notice it. Independently, all over the world, cultures built entire systems of time around this one repeating shape in the sky, not because the moon held some mystical power, because it was reliable, and reliability was the one thing an oral society could actually hold on to. Now, stack the seasons on top of that, because this is where the real skeleton of ancient timekeeping shows up. In places with wet and dry seasons, people didn't count years. They counted rains. I was born 3 rains ago. In colder regions, people counted winters. A child wasn't 4 years old. They were 4 winters old. And that small phrase tells you something huge. Age wasn't an abstraction pulled off a clock. It was a memory stored in the body. You remember rains because you survived them. You remember winters because you were cold. Time here isn't measured. It's felt. And once agriculture entered the picture for some groups, the system got even more layered without ever needing a written date. Planting and harvest became anchors. A child born the season we planted late because the rains came early carried that whole story with them for life. Ask an elder how old someone was, and you wouldn't get a number back. You'd get a small history lesson. A flood? A good harvest? A hard winter that thinned the herd. Age and memory were fused together on purpose, because a community that remembers its disasters through its children is a community that never forgets what it survived. And here's what's wild. This wasn't some sloppy, approximate guesswork, the way we might assume. It ran entire societies with real internal consistency. Anthropologists studying groups from East Africa to the Arctic have documented age tracking systems accurate down to the season. Sometimes tighter than that, not to the day. But for the actual demands of daily life, that level of precision was more than enough for tens of thousands of years. Here's where it gets genuinely interesting, though, because knowing roughly how old you are is different from marking the exact day you were born, and a huge number of cultures skipped the second thing entirely. Instead, they marked something arguably more meaningful: the moment you became someone new. This is the part I keep coming back to. Instead of a birthday, plenty of societies built a person's entire sense of age around initiation, a shared, physically demanding ritual that happened not on a fixed date, but when a whole cohort of children reached the same stage of life together. Picture it, a group of kids, roughly the same age, going through the identical ordeal, the identical ceremony, at the same moment, bonded for the rest of their lives by that one shared transition. Anthropologists call these age sets, and they show up independently across enormous stretches of the world. Parts of East Africa, certain indigenous nations across the Americas and Australia, scattered cultures throughout the Pacific. A person didn't say, "I turned 13. They said, "I belong to the generation initiated the year of the Great Drought," or "I'm of the set named for when the elephants passed through." Their age wasn't a digit, it was a membership. Sit with that for a second, because it stops sounding strange and starts sounding almost clever. A calendar date tells you nothing about who someone is. An age set tells you everything: who their peers are, what they're expected to know, what responsibilities they've earned, who they owe loyalty to for life. This is why one culture marks a specific number on a specific day, while another marks a transformation shared with an entire cohort, and neither approach is more advanced than the other. They just optimized for different things. We optimized for the individual. They optimized for the group. Naming followed the same logic. Across huge swaths of oral tradition, a child wasn't named on some neutral pre-decided day. They were named after an event, the season they arrived in, the weather that day, something remarkable that happened in the village at that exact moment. A name itself became a timestamp. Say it out loud generations later, and someone could tell you roughly when that person came into the world, just from what the name referred to. No ledger required. The memory was baked directly into the person's identity. Think about how differently that functions compared to a birth certificate. A number on a form doesn't tell a story. It just sits there, inert, waiting to be looked up. A name born out of a drought, or a migration, or a strange season of good luck does the opposite. It travels with the person everywhere they go, quietly narrating their arrival to everyone who hears it. You couldn't forget when someone was born even if you tried, because their name kept insisting on the memory. That's not a workaround for the absence of writing. In some ways, it's a more elegant solution than writing ever offered. And here's the part that actually gets me. None of this worked without other people. One person cannot carry 3 generations of oral history alone, but a community can. Elders remembered who was born during which drought. Grandmothers remembered who arrived during which harvest. Age wasn't stored in a document. It was stored in relationships, spread across dozens of memories that quietly checked each other for accuracy. Losing an elder didn't just mean losing a person. It meant losing a piece of the community's clock. That's an extraordinary kind of vulnerability. It's also an extraordinary kind of trust. Your birth mattered enough that other people carried it for you, for decades, without ever writing a single word down. So why didn't the exact date matter more? Because identity in these societies wasn't built around an individual number. It was built around your place inside the group. What mattered wasn't the day you arrived. It was the role you were growing into, the cohort you belonged to, the responsibilities that came bundled with your stage of life. A precise date of birth is useful in a world of paperwork, taxes, school enrollment, legal adulthood. It's almost beside the point in a world where your worth is measured by what you give to the people around you, not by a number on a form somewhere. None of this means the past was simpler, or that these systems were crude guesses standing in for something better. If anything, they were remarkably efficient, built entirely on things that couldn't burn in a fire or get lost in a drawer. The sky, the seasons, shared memory, shared ritual. They just required something modern systems have quietly stopped needing: a community willing to actually remember you. And maybe that's the real trade we made without noticing. We gained precision, a number stamped the day we arrived, filed somewhere safe, retrievable forever. But we lost the version of timekeeping that depended on people, not paperwork. A date on a certificate doesn't need anyone to keep loving you in order to survive. A name born out of a drought, or a memory carried by a grandmother does. One of those systems is more convenient. The other one, arguably, asked more of the people around you and got it. So did ancient people know it was their birthday? Mostly no, but they knew something else instead. They knew which reigns they'd survived, which cohort they belonged to, which name carried their arrival folded inside it, and exactly which people around them had chosen, generation after generation, to remember. And honestly, that might be a stranger, warmer answer than any date on a calendar could ever give you.